Plastics for Change is the world's largest source of fair trade recycled plastic. And I have some slides here that I'll take you through what we do in a little more detail. So we've recognized that there's a huge environmental problem with over 400 brands making the claim to use 25% recycled plastic by 2025. But none of them are really on track to achieve that goal despite enormous pressure from regulators, tax on the use of the fossil fuel-based virgin plastic, and the overall audacious challenge of our time of addressing climate change and also inequality globally. So the reason why a lot of these brands are failing to meet their recycling goals is because 58% of all the plastic that enters the circular economy globally comes from the informal sector in emerging markets. So there's some 20 million people at the base of these supply chains that are often some of the poorest people in society. And the supply chains are so fragmented and unorganized that as a result, only 2% of all the plastic produced each year is recycled into high quality applications that can replace the use of the virgin-based fossil fuels. So at Plastics for Change, we've developed an ethical sourcing platform that connects those at the base of the supply chain with global brands and manufacturers to ensure a consistent supply of high quality plastic from fair trade supply chains. So we use a variety of different authenticity and trust to the impact that we're creating. We shipped our first container load of plastic in 2018, and now we're working with many of the world's largest brands and manufacturers to provide them and catalyze that transition away from fossil fuels. In a nutshell, how it works is we start by understanding the needs of the brands and manufacturers and then reverse engineer the supply chain to get that material delivered to them on time and full. That means connecting thousands of waste collectors with hundreds of scrap shops and setting up the Plastics for Change collection center. And in fact, we now have live impact dashboards that helps to communicate our message with brands. So it's all about ensuring the right quality, having really meaningful impact on the ground, and then translating that into a strategy to help brands increase market share. And we've been able to demonstrate that with cosmetics. Cosmetics in the cosmetic sector, actually, this product attribute, if you compare the A/B split testing, it increases the market, increases the sales by around 30%, because consumers are familiar with the concept of fair trade agriculture, buying a fair trade coffee, and given how personal the plastic pollution crisis is, they're wanting to vote with their wallet and purchase from brands who are taking action. So our core business model, just to summarize, is selling the plastic. We also have a merchandise division where we sell the finished merchandise like t-shirts, apparel, etc., directly to brands. And then plastic credits, similar to carbon credits, but for helping to make it possible to collect some of the harder recycled plastic. We've completed our 4th consecutive year of growing 3x from our first launch of our first fair trade recycled plastic. It's been an incredible journey, and we're looking to continue the scale-up process to connect the estimated 20 million waste collectors. If we can get 5% market share, that'd be amazing to help a million folks at the base of the supply chain get access to these global markets and become the largest recycler globally.
1 minute warning.
Eating away at this $500 billion virgin market share, which is this $500 billion is due to triple in our lifetime and be responsible for over 16% of greenhouse gases, as it uses so much carbon getting this material out of the Earth's crust and processed into polymers. Our existing clients just themselves consume around $3 billion worth of plastics every year. So really it's all about increasing the scale and connecting, being the best in the world at serving those at the base of the supply chain and keeping track with the growth of the plastics industry. Our success is all because of our amazing team here in South India. The leadership teams now all been together for 4 years, and we've accomplished some incredible milestones, proving our product market fit, proving our scalability. We just raised $500,000 as part of the Series A for our expansion into Southeast Asia. and we're looking for other folks to carry on that investment for a $5 million Series A to help us continue our growth, expanding what we're doing to
Time
not
is
only
up.
in India, but also in Southeast Asia. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you for presenting. Thanks for sharing. Incredibly interesting. Let me pull the other panelists in. While I do, just one of the quick questions I'm sure a lot of folks will have. How do you scale something that does seem so intensive operationally and inherently challenging to scale?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is over the last 6 or 7 years, we've developed really solid standard operating procedures, and everything's digitalized. And then we've also just launched our first franchisee in South India. So we anticipate that going forward, around 50% of the new aggregation centers would be franchisee model, so that it allows us to continue our exponential growth, again, growing 3x for 4 consecutive years, continuing that pace without getting too dependent on capital and operational complexities.
What do you provide to franchisees? Why do they want to be a franchisee?
So if you're a scrap entrepreneur today, there's a lot of things that our executive team has done over the last 7 years, such as developing all the segregation methodologies, developing the marketplaces with brands and manufacturers, leveraging the Plastics for Change brand as the first fair trade verified recycled plastic, being able to leverage our app and our technology, and overall our whole system for connecting more waste collectors, because more waste collectors will want to do business with these scrap entrepreneurs because they also get access not only to fair, consistent income opportunities, but also a variety of other social impact activities like access to healthcare, education, financial literacy, shelter, as well as tapping into the existing social service scheme. So it's increasing both the supply and demand side. And we've had over 350 scrap entrepreneurs apply to be franchisees through our website. And it's more so just about going and vetting them.
And that's just cold outreach?
That is not doing any
I'm sorry,
advertising at all.
inbound. Sorry, inbound, I mean.
That's just people signing up through our website.
But
Yeah.
impressive. I would kick things
Now
over
we're
to
going to launch that and market it a little more. Sorry.
and see what happens. That could be interesting. I'll kick things over to Stephanie. I've got more questions, but would love to hear what the other panelists think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the great background on your company. And just a little bit about more on the, customer side. Could you tell us a little bit more about your customer acquisition strategy?
Yeah, so it's really about really truly understanding the industries, have them reach their recycling goal. What I've recognized is so many of these brands, so many of these manufacturers, they don't actually have a plan. So when we connect with them, we use our data. We have over 830,000 data points on our platform now, and we say, to reach your recycling goal, we're going to need to have exactly this many waste collectors, this many scrap shops, and this many aggregation and segregation centers. And then we just submit a plan to have them achieve their goal. And so far, all the clients who've started purchasing from us, none of them have ever stopped. And we've been able to take many companies on their journey to achieve their recycling goals across both domestic sales, but also on export sales.
Got it. And just one follow-up there. And so how long is that typical sales cycle for you?
Depends on the size of the brand. And usually like the big giants, you're looking at anywhere between 6 months and 12 months for like the big companies. If it's a smaller manufacturer, some of their decision-making process is a little more lean, and we've had conversions in 2 months. So it depends on the org structure primarily.
Got it. Thank you.
But our demand is like, we're sold out. Even just the demand for traditional recycled plastic as a commodity, the demand is already much higher than the supply. It's more about being able to scale our supply capacity. And we've recognized that all the new market share is in the global south, where a country like India, the amount of plastic being consumed every year has doubled in the last 5 years. So it's very hard to keep up with that in terms of like just the size of the pie, how quickly it's growing. And we also anticipate that as the regulations kick in 2025, as mandatory recycling rates become a thing, as more companies implement this tax on virgin plastic, that a lot of companies would benefit from acquiring a strategic shareholding in Plastics for Change to gain access to the raw materials, increase their market share while avoiding regulatory compliance fees.
Thank you.
Are you worried about losing your independence then?
No, I'm not. I don't think so, because the more impact that we create, the more sales, like the more it helps to strengthen the loyalty with the brands and manufacturers. So being able to have a really authentic brand, being able to visualize our impact in real time, the full supply chain transparency is something that ultimately is really good for business, because consumers are voting with their wallet and they want to choose not only companies that are using recycled plastic, but using recycled plastic that's creating a social impact and from supply chains that they can trust.
And for panelists, you can jump in whenever you want. There is no real order.
So can I ask a quick, thank you for the presentation, really interesting, of course. Can I ask about the customer side? Do you have a sense as to how much those customers are investing or looking for alternate materials as opposed to recycled plastic materials?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to our segments, we have a really good product market fit in fashion, apparel, cosmetics, basically any consumer facing good. I do see the role of alternatives and also just using less plastic or eliminating the use of plastic as being key. Highly support that. But when it comes to our sector of like cosmetics and FMCG, there's not been very much adoption of, say, like a polylactic acid or is the most common bioplastic, because it's very expensive, and then it's also like the life cycle analysis. When you really compare it, it's also using a lot of resources, and then it's also not. It's very hard to have the recycling infrastructure to do anything with the polylactic acid afterwards. So we're not seeing the bioplastics gain a lot of market share in our sector. Where bioplastics have a really good market share or really good niche is in the plastics that are never going to be recycled. So things like little like sachet packs that weigh half a gram and that are economically just extremely challenging to get high recycling rates. That's where I think bioplastics is being rolled out more effectively.
Yeah, my question was related to like the big brands. If I'm a Clairol, if I'm a fashion cosmetics company, am I investing in replacing with paper, recycled paper, cardboard? What am I thinking about in terms of plastics? Or and I want to make sure that it's not a greenwashing piece, that they're going to put in 25% recycled plastic into a 75% virgin plastic, get the box tick, and move on. So I'm trying to understand, is the driver coming from those guys making genuine change, or is the driver coming from accessibility of plastic supply in the global south that you're processing and you're finding a new market for?
Yeah, the demand is much higher than the supply globally, and then the $500 billion virgin plastics industry today is supposed to triple. So it's just ludicrous how much plastic the world's consuming, and we want to just help transition as much of that market away from the virgin plastic to the recycled plastic. And ideally, we launch SKUs at 100% PCR. Sometimes the company's in a scale-up period where we start at, like with the Body Shop, we started at a smaller amount and then worked our way up to 100% over time. But it's about having that mutual action plan and executing.
So the supply is much greater than the demand. So how are you finding pricing competitiveness?
No, the demand is much higher than the supply. That's why all these brands are failing to meet their recycling goals.
That's what I mean. So are you finding positive wins for you? Are you able to push the price up? Are you not? Where are the brands giving you pushback? When does demand run out of price?
Yeah, we sold out our supply capacity, and then we raised our prices a little bit, but we found offtake agreements and predictable margins as like the key for us. But we've recognized that it's highly profitable for the brand because they're gaining market share so quickly with the younger generation of consumers.
Okay.
Who would you say are some of your competitors in the space?
By far, our biggest competitors are the informal waste traders in the communities where we operate. Their business model is like be really cheap, so no compliance, try to indenture when possible, and yeah, like just no, like completely informal. So we are able to compete against those guys by accessing the global market and then developing strong relations with our industry partners that value the transparency through the supply chain. And then in terms of like the larger kind of niche of plastic with a story, we're seeing hopefully that I think that niche is going to get bigger, but we're seeing not a lot of regional competition doing that very well at the moment.
Got it.
What do you think about Octopus, the recycling company? They're focused more on South America at the moment, but they seem to be doing pretty well in Mexico and South America. How do you compare?
I'm not familiar with them. I'd have to do a bit of Googling.
No worries.
Octopus.
They're an SOSV company.
Okay. I'll check them out. Thanks, man.
What do you view as the biggest risk in the company?
The biggest risk in the company, well, we've been through extraordinary shocks so far in our company's development, like whether that's the introduction of GST or, COVID, like we demonstrated our ability to scale 3x even during COVID. So I think like our team was very resilient, but I think like just like maintaining a good corporate culture and good team chemistry, I think is like the main key to success. And if that gets disrupted, I think the culture is the key to our success.
What does success mean for you?
Success means getting as many of these informal sector stakeholders onboarded onto our platform and verified through fair trade supply chains, and while catalyzing the transition away from fossil fuels.
So you might maybe with franchisees as well, but you're managing the whole collection and processing. What's your kind of environmental concern like with your plants?
Yeah, so we have an internal target to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 7% each year. We started rolling out electric vehicles in India, which are now starting to become economically viable. And we want to continue to do that in terms of also installing solar on the rooftops as part of our budget for our Series A. However, overall, because the waste is collected, like the waste collectors typically don't have a car or a vehicle, so they're picking it up by hand. And when we do our LCA, our supply chains are actually very, very minimal, even compared to when you compare it to the production of virgin plastic.
So sorry, that's good in itself. I actually meant the processing of plastics directly. How much of an industrial production, how much of an industrial facility do you have, or do you need to have if you're going to be spinning this out to a lot of franchisees? What's the processing of the plastic part like?
Right. So at our centers, the plastic is sorted and graded on conveyor belts. And the key to ensuring high quality plastic is making sure that the polymers are not mixed. Because what goes into the extrusion lines where the plastic is melted into granules, what you put in is what you get out, basically. When it comes to that process itself, that does use more electricity because you have to heat the material. And it's something that we measure as part of our agreements with our processing partners that do the conversion into granules. We don't actually do that in-house currently.
Okay, yeah, that's what I mean. Cool.
Are you able to tap into any government incentives in the work that you're doing?
No, we haven't really tapped into any government incentives. Our model, I have a bit of a confession. I'm very much allergic to government offices, and I've built the model to not have to step foot in them, especially in the global south, because global, not even the global south. Everywhere you go in the world, there's a relationship between the municipality and the waste management contractors, and quite often corruption is used as a way of the waste management contractor getting that contract from the local municipality. So our approach is like, let's not even get involved in that whatsoever. Let's just go right to the base of the supply chain and source from the people who are actually doing the work of picking it up. So we haven't tapped into too much government funding yet. That being said, I think there's lots of grants and we're getting really good recognition. We also save the municipalities millions of dollars every year by reducing their waste disposal fees. So every kilogram of plastic that's picked up by the informal sector is one less kilogram of plastic that taxpayer revenue needs to go towards funding the collection of, which by itself is another huge impact on society.